Hello there, shortcuts. This is video 2 for the price list that will go out this Wednesday, March 26th at 9 p.m. This is the soul, blues, jazz, and funk list. So the genre list, effectively. And yeah, just a couple of things that I mentioned in the other video. Thank you if you came to my Manly Record Fair last weekend, or if I caught up with you at Paddington Record Fair this weekend. The Manly Record Fair was awesome, just a massive success. Over 500 people. We're doing it again in June. It was incredible. So thank you so much if you came and supported that. So a lot of people joined the club from those two events. So there's a lot of new folks who will hopefully be watching these videos. All right, now what do we got? If you aren't on the price list but would like to be in the price list, drop me an email, shortcutsrecordsaus@gmail.com. You can join almost 400 people. We're nearly at 400 subscribers on this little site as well. All right, I am starting off with 3 female soul divas. One a legend, one a personal favorite of mine, and one I'm not sure what to make, but I'm a fan, so we'll see. None of these, actually, no. This first one I've definitely not had before. The Irma Thomas, I'm not sure. The middle one I have, and I love it. And then we've got some reggae as well. So let's see how we go. So I did make some notes earlier when I opened the box. So let me just make sure I've got those notes. For many of you know, when I open the box, I often don't know what's in it. I might know 10% if there's been special requests or whatever, but I often know nothing. And this record was in it. Now, I got one of these back in 2021, and that's on my shelf. And this is the second I've seen in 5 years. I love this sleeve. Look at that. That is the debut solo album by Diana Ross from 1970. And look at the back of it as well. How incredible is that photo? Now, Diana Ross, of course, was the part of the group Supremes, at that time, the greatest female group. Eventually became Diana Ross and the Supremes. And then it became really not a very well kept secret that Diana Ross was going to make her own solo record. So you know the Beyoncés and Justin Timberlakes of the world. Diana Ross was the first to make this happen, and a bunch of legendary Motown producers were well aware. But the two that ended up with the job were these two folks here, Nick Ashford and Valerie Simpson. And they went about collating some of the greatest songs that were around at the time and writing some songs specifically for Diana Ross, because she was already a legend and a very sophisticated singer. And you'd be forgiven for thinking in some of her later kind of 80s tracks and others that her voice was a little bit thin. It wasn't. Wait till you listen to this record. Her singing is absolutely fantastic. Legendary team, Nicholas Ashford, Valerie Simpson, they pulled together some songs. The first track that they released was the opening track, Reach Out and Touch Somebody's Hand. And it was very well regarded, very well reviewed. But it kind of stalled out on the charts round about 20, which was a disappointment at the time. They really did think that this was, kind of a top trajectory song on both the R&B and the pop charts. But then the second single hit, and this is the one that I'm going to talk about. This is the reworking of Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell's Ain't No Mountain High Enough. Now, that track appears at the end of side 1. It's a weird place to put it. Typically, these bigger tracks, especially on the Motown records, were either track 1, side 1, or track 1, side 2. This song is over 6 minutes long, which is, more than 3 times the typical length of a Supreme single. And Diana Ross had to fight for this. They utilize her speaking voice for about the first 4 minutes of this song. It is the slowest of slow builds. It builds and builds and builds. And then around about the 4 minute 20 mark, that chorus, Ain't No Mountain High Enough, hits like a hammer. It comes down from heaven. And the backing vocals and the instrumentation comes together. And then Diana Ross just freaking nails it. It is an epic song. And, worth it just for that song alone, this album. The great thing is the other 9 are awesome too. The production on the following song, Something on My Mind, which opens side 2, has this clippity-cloppity kind of percussion beat. It's just a fantastic record. Her 1980 record, Diana, was her biggest selling. And then, of course, she had huge hits with Chain Reaction, etc. But this Motown sound recording, I think it's the one. It's the only Diana Ross record I have on my shelf. I think it's the only Diana Ross record that anyone really needs. The Thing That Will Keep Me Loving You is so delicate and beautiful. I don't know. I love it. I think it's great. And this is the Japanese first press as well from 1970. On of course, the original Tamla Motown label. It's still got the original paper sleeve in it as well. And this, which is really amazing. Look at those photos of Diana Ross. Just really special one, this. Yeah. And of course, for those of you who aren't familiar, always the English lyrics as well as the Japanese lyrics with truly interesting translations that happen. Now, this is the first of about 6 soul records on this list that I think are all worthy of anyone's collection. The second is this, Millie Jackson's Still Caught Up. I'm going to take this out too because look at these sleeves. Just wonderful. Millie Jackson, as many of you know, my personal favourite female soul singer. That's her debut album that I had on the list a little while back. That's the follow-up, Hurt So Good, which I also had on the list a little while ago. Then there's a middle one which I haven't got and I haven't seen, just called Millie. And then this, the all-time classic, Caught Up. And this is the follow-up to Caught Up, called Still Caught Up. The further adventures of the love triangle that was described in Caught Up. And you know what? It's just as good. Her voice is incredible. She is a powerhouse, whereas Diana Ross is beauty and sophistication. Millie Jackson is earthiness and sexuality and confronting and just full on, fearless, completely unfiltered. The things she says. Even now, there are times when we go, oh, you didn't just say that. I don't know. I mean, obviously didn't sell as many records as some of the other soul singers, but amazing backing musicians as well. The band, the production quality, the sound quality of those records, deep soul, recorded at Muscle Shoals, which is important because I'm going to talk about Muscle Shoals again in a second. The Swampers were most of her backing band as opposed to the Muscle Shoals house band. She is an absolute killer at the spoken word intro to a song. It's great. It's great. If you have Caught Up and like it, you will like Still Caught Up. If you haven't got Caught Up, but you still want to get in there, you'll get Still Caught Up and you'll want to go back. It's just brilliant. Just brilliant. So then the third of those soul singers, who I think isn't quite as top tier, but I really like this record, is this one. This is, I'm just going to get the exact name because it's a little bit, yeah, Down at Muscle Shoals by Irma Thomas. Now, this is 1973, so I think pretty much could be exactly the same year as Millie Jackson. Let me just check my notes. No, Millie Jackson 75. This is 73. Now, Irma Thomas was nicknamed the Soul Queen of New Orleans, and wasn't quite the commercial success of a Diana Ross or even really an Aretha or any of those tiers. You can't really talk of her in those tiers, but she's got a really raw and kind of really cool voice. Even by the early 70s, she'd had a roller coaster career. Some record companies had backed her with a band and a record, and it never quite worked out. And Down at Muscle Shoals was somewhat of a comeback. She hadn't had a record for a while. It was recorded at Fame Studios in Alabama, and it was a pretty big hit at the time, in certain parts of the US, but then others it just didn't get any radio play, and it just didn't happen. It's got that sweaty Muscle Shoals sound, that southern blues. Muscle Shoals were less lush than Motown, and more interested in having a horn kind of blowing up a storm and getting a bit of sweat and groove going. She's taken my part. I've Been Loving You for Too Long, which I think is maybe a highlight. She's really good at those kind of passionate, kind of heartache songs. The production is really organic and vibrant. Really sounds like a record you should listen to on vinyl. So while it's not being a big hit, not being in the tier, not being on the list of classic soul records, I enjoy it very, very, very much. And so there you go, on the Chess label, Down at Muscle Shoals by the beautiful Irma Thomas. All right, now on to probably my favorite reggae band, and there may be some more of this band to come. Monkey Man by the Maytals, probably my favorite reggae album. This is the UK press of Pass the Pipe by Toots and the Maytals. Legendary, absolutely incredible Frederick Toots Hibbert. What a voice, what a songwriter, what a life. I don't know how many stints in prison, I don't know how he lived his life. It's like 5 squeezed into one, but also inspired bands like the Specials and others into new worlds. And 1979 coming to the end of that decade where the Maytals were just amazing. Albums like Funky Kingston, just a brilliant band. At this point, they already made Pressure Drop, Monkey Man. Their legend was already sustained. But Pass the Pipe by the late 70s was a little bit slicker, not quite as rootsy, more gospel infused, kind of multiple choirs and voices, quite high energy. It's a really happy record. My copy is one I've had for a long time. It's quite popular in this household. It even stretches into funk in places. Just kind of shows where Toots and the Maytals could have gone. Wasn't a massive chart hit. Kind of a hidden treasure. You don't see it around very often. I love the sleeve. It's just a fun, cool record. On Mango as well, which is kind of unusual. You don't see many albums on Mango Records. So there you go. I mean, this is a record. You can hear Bob Marley's more smooth reggae influence infiltrating Toots and the Maytals. In fact, one of the songs, No Difference Here, was inspired by a long conversation that Toots and Bob Marley had about how reggae music was divisioning off and splitting up at the time. And so, yeah, it's a really fun and vibrant, happy summertime listen. All right, before we move on to some more soul records, I'm going to stick in a little change of scene. This is Punk in Drublic in Dublic, Punk in Drublic by NOFX from 1994. Now, I'm going to call out something really cool about this. This is a sold out version of this record that was released to members only by Vinyl Me Please. So this is number, you can see, 135 of 500. It's on coloured vinyl. You don't know what it is until you open it, and this is still sealed. So one of only a few in Australia, I would expect. Most of them were claimed by the US membership, so it was super hard to get a copy here. I managed to get two on Epitaph Records. So, if you know this band, you're talking about one of the more irreverent bands, kind of very technically skilled though, driving political skate punk energy. They toured here a bit ago. I don't know. They're kind of, I guess it's one of their kind of signature albums. It's not my thing, hence why I'm happy for someone else to have it more than me. Of course, a parody of Drunken in Public. I'm not sure what to make of that name. I guess it's a part of that ethos, I think. Anyway, if anyone's a fan, tell me why in the comments. I am going to flip to a few more soul records. We had some female legends. Now we've got a couple of male legends, including what's probably James Brown's most famous album. And this is a pretty special thing. James Brown live at the Apollo. I'll Go Crazy, Try Me, Think I Don't Mind, Lost Someone. Think I Don't Mind kind of are all kind of segue into Love Someone Part 1, which I think is one of the most hair-raising and exciting sequences in the history of soul music. There's another kind of segue of just songs on side 2, like 7 songs just all merging together. It's so exciting. The crowd noise, it's got to be the best recorded crowd noise in the history of soul music, and the Japanese loved it so much that they recorded the first press on red translucent vinyl. Beautiful thing. It's the Japanese first press of the legendary James Brown live at the Apollo. Get some pretty cool things on the shortcuts list. And what about this? So this is weird, right? White sleeve when this arrived. I was like, what is this? And it turns out it is this. It is the white promo test pressing of an album called Sweet and Sour Tears by one Mr. Ray Charles. Now, why is this record so interesting? So when Sweet and Sour Tears was recorded in 1964, it was a concept album that Ray recorded. He was at the height of his powers. He seamlessly blended soul, jazz, country, blues. He did that with modern sounds in country and western. Here, this was a debut or a concept album dedicated to heartbreak and tears. So every song is a heartfelt, slow, emotional ballad, which that makes it sound like it should be a slog, except it's Ray Charles. It's like, oh my God, his vocals are unbelievably good. Their string arrangements, and probably the reason this record so hits, the piano playing. Blues riffs in with the strings, with Ray. Oh my gosh. Worth it alone for the track I Cried For You. Holy moly. It's so good. No sleeve, just a test pressing on white vinyl. On a white sleeve. But there you have it. Now, the notes that came with this one say that it is unplayed, and it certainly looks that way. All right, I've got one more Ray Charles record. This is his debut album from 1957. Drowning My Own Tears, Hallelujah, I Love Her So, signature call and response, vocal phrasing, the choirs, the brass. It is just signature quality Ray Charles. His records became more successful and commercial in time. But when this record sits there, this is kind of like the welcoming through the door of Sam Cooke and Otis Redding and those records into the pop charts. So this is a real, I guess, legacy record in the history of soul music, and therefore it's also one that I love very much as well. Okay, I've got a little bit of jazz before we move on to some blues. This is My Funny Valentine by Miles Davis, 1965. Already a complete innovator. The band, Miles Davis on trumpet, George Coleman on tenor sax, only Herbie Hancock on piano, Ron Carter on bass, and Tony Williams on drums. Maybe, the greatest rhythm section ever. My Funny Valentine, All of You, Stella by Starlight, which is by a mile a highlight, all blues, and I Thought About You. And what I like about this record, compared to some Miles records, is it's quite ballad heavy. So it's very palatable. It's just beautiful. But it sits there kind of in the midst of that kind of civil rights era. So it's very expressive. You can hear the crowd reacting to some of the things. The title track is, another absolute centerpiece track. Now, what's interesting about it, in 2006, the Japanese commissioned and released a 21 album box set of everything that Miles Davis had produced up until that time. Or actually, no, that's not quite true. It didn't do the electric era, so it would have been all of his kind of acoustic and the records he did, like Cooking, etc. And then that box set sold out, and it now costs gazillions. But I found 4 or 5 copies that were that someone must have split them out, and a few of those have gone onto my shelf because it sounds amazing. They are super heavy. They've got a few little marks, but you can't really hear them. They sound great. Proper audiophile. Highly, highly, highly recommended. The Japanese were also really good at these blues compilations. In this case, this is Big Bill Broonzy, probably the most famous and greatest of all of the acoustic blues dudes from the 40s and 50s. And it's a really nice compilation. It's a what I call a red label promo, and it sounds great. All right, now on to something I've never had on the list before. This is another one of my UK first presses, and this is Rory Gallagher's Defender. So this was, I think it was either his second last or last record, 1987. He hadn't released a record in a while due to his kind of health issues, and he also kind of in his the stories on the biographies talk about they had some creative, basically writer's block. But this was really a triumphant return to form. This mixes more kind of hard rock and blues, but it also has one of my favorite Rory Gallagher tracks, which is track 2, Lone Shark Blues, which segues into Continental Op, which has one of his best kind of rock riffs. Now, I'm not the biggest Rory Gallagher fan. I only have a few of his records. The vocals, etc., I don't know. It just doesn't hit me. But his Stratocaster does cut through. And I wanted to show you something special about this. The UK first press was the only one that came with this, which was an additional single. Now, this single is in pristine condition, and it's track 1 is No Peace for the Wicked, and track 2 is Seems to Me. So this is the UK first press, complete with the quite rare single, and the single is absolutely mint condition. I don't think it's ever been played. The record itself is absolutely beautiful as well. That is Defender by the mighty Rory Gallagher. UK first press with single. Now, I'm going to have to be quick because I'm way over time. This is a sealed record from 1977. US sealed record. A compilation of the Ohio Players singles that led up to their debut album. Rare as. You can see on here it says it was $1.65. I think it was sold somewhere in Chicago and it was never opened. It is in fantastic condition. Someone else surely will want to open some 70s sealed Ohio Players with a string of classic 12 inches. Finally, actually two records, but one of them is Shortcuts Royalty, the wondrous compilation of the best of Stevie Wonder. This is Shortcuts Royalty. About 65 of us have this now. It is utterly wonderful. If it's not in your collection, think hard. And then finally, this was a record at the record fair that one of my club members pulled out and said, "This is my favorite blues record, and this Austrian pressing sounds amazing." And I have it for the glorious sum of $10. It is Robert Cray's Strong Persuader. Strong Persuader, mid-80s. Blues was kind of main off to the side. And, you know, people like Stevie Ray Vaughan and Robert Cray brought it kind of careering back into view. Fresh contemporary take. Brought new fans to the fold. I think the highlight, the opening track, is Smoking Gun. Really, you know, I think, I can't remember who it was. In fact, I don't even know if I know who it was. Eric Clapton, who's a massive fan of Robert Cray, toured this album with Robert Cray. I don't know. Very cool album. If you would like to be on the price list for that selection of blues, soul, funk, and jazz, send me an email, shortcutsrecords@gmail.com. The price list will go out 9 p.m. Sydney time sharp. That's this Wednesday, March 26th. As always, if you made it this far, my praise to you, my love, my appreciation, and my thanks. Please leave a comment, like, and do all that stuff that social media seems to love. Otherwise, they leave you stranded or out on an island by your own. So yeah, thank you so much. Bye.